This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. Today I am joined by Tancredi Biondi Santi, who is joining us all the way from Tuscany. How are you today, sir?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Now, you were saying the weather has turned a little for the grey behind you there. That's quite unusual for this time of year?
Let's say it's a little bit unusual, so rainy and so cold, but it's quite normal for spring. So it's a beautiful spring. Let's hope that all this water that is coming out, I can let you see how much water is coming here in Montepo.
It looks like Scotland during the summer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But let's hope that all this water will give us the opportunity to pass through a dry, beautiful summer and to arrive at harvest period with still hydric reserves.
Super, super. Now, the Biondi Santi name is known the world over, but for those people who do not know the history of your family, which goes back quite some way.
Seventh generation from the invention of the Brunello di Montalcino.
So if you wouldn't mind giving us a potted history of what you have been doing over these 7 generations at Biondi Santi.
Absolutely. So basically the Biondi Santi family, it's a historical Toscan family based in Tuscany and dating its origins until the 14th century. And the family has always lived in Tuscany, has always had properties around Tuscany. And the most well-known one was the one in Montalcino, around the Siena area.
Yes.
So we're always speaking about Tuscany, around the Siena area, and I'm saying that, as you said at the beginning, I represented the 7th generation of the Biondi Santi family since the invention of the Brunello di Montalcino. So basically everything started at the beginning of the 19th century when a pioneer in our family, Clemente Santi, tried to experiment a new vinification at the time, trying to vinificate this grape variety called Sangiovese Grosso, which is an autochthonous grape variety here in Tuscany. So he basically started this vinification. He understood the incredible potential of this of the wine that was coming out from this vinification. And after 2 generations from Ferruccio Biondi Santi, this wine has been called in 1868 for the first time Brunello. So from that moment until now, the production of Brunello has always been made in the same way from the family, and until 3 years ago, when the family decided to sell the property in Montalcino, going to develop completely a newer property here in Maremma, where I am right now, which is the Castello di Montepò. And this newer property was born over 30 years ago. So at the end of the 80s, my father was searching for a newer place and a different place where to experiment his own clone selection. So basically the family have owned a clone of Sangiovese Grosso when we discovered that we had a unique clone of Sangiovese Grosso in Montalcino. So this was happening during the 70s, and at the end of the 80s, my father made a trademark on this clone selection called the Sangiovese Grosso BBS 11. BBS means Brunello Biondi Santi plant number 11. And my father wanted really to experiment on this clone, and so he started to search for a different place, still located in Tuscany. So he went around, yeah.
What was it that made this particular clone so special and distinguished it from all of the other Sangiovese out there?
Basically, we didn't know that by vinificating and planting and replanting in Montalcino, we didn't know that we basically discovered, even by doing a clone selection study, we discovered a plant not registered on the clones under the clone of Sangiovese Grosso.
Right.
So it was the number 11, and my father understood the potential and made a trademark on it. So the clone has been can be used only by the family worldwide.
I see. And when it comes to the grape itself, what are the physical characteristics of the grape that distinguish it from the other clones?
Basically, in the grape is quite evident, the distinction, because usually the Sangiovese Grosso has a central main body and then two are called two wings on top of it. So just one bunch of grapes is made by one main body and two wings, while the BBS 11, for example, doesn't have the two wings. So there are morphological and then chemical distinctions on these on every clone, of course, of Sangiovese Grosso, and this clone has morphological distinctions as well.
So on the property that you're at right now, that's a 600-hectare property, I believe, with about 50 hectares planted to vine. What makes that location so special?
Well, basically, at the end of the 80s, when my father was searching for a newer spot where to start his project on the Sangiovese Grosso BBS 11, he had choose the Castello di Montepò property because, of course, because of the beauty of the place itself, but most for a study done by the universities of Pisa and Firenze over here in Montepo to study all the different microzonas and all the different soils of the parcels of the winery. So at that time, there were no vineyards planted at all. So my father started the project from scratches. He understood the incredible potential over here in terms of microzonas. And so he wanted to develop the project on the BBS 11 here in Montepo.
You have quite a particular soil type there, I believe. Do you pronounce it fleche?
Fleche, yes. It is, we usually call it galestro. It's a very mineral soil. From this study with the universities, we understood that just within the winery of Montepo, so just within 600 hectares, we have 14 different types of galestro. And this is affecting the plants of the BBS 11 with the minerality that the soil releases to the roots.
And it's a kind of mix of sandstone, marl, and clay, I believe.
Yes, it is. Right. It is. And it comes from the erosion of mother rock as well.
So in your time working within your family's business, how have you seen the wines evolve and change? Would you say that your family made traditional wines or more contemporary wines?
Well, that's a very hard question.
Right.
Because over here, my father have tried different vinifications on the same grape variety. And we are producing, let's say we are using as much technology and innovation as possible.
Right.
It doesn't get in conflict with the tradition of the family.
Yeah.
So, for example, we are using drones to scan the soils and the vineyards directly. We are trying to be more and more located on the treatments on the vineyards. We are using meteo station to study the climate change and the meteo around the winery. But for example, still the harvest is all handmade. There is no machines working in the vineyards during harvest. All is handmade, and we really strongly believe that technology can help, but we are still very related to the chain of tradition. So here tradition is very important, and even on the style of the wines, we are doing yes, a little bit more modern style of wine, let's say, but always respecting the tradition of the BBS 11. So you can be as modern as you want and as you wish, but tradition will always be in every bottle from Montepo.
And as I mentioned earlier, you've been working with the company for quite some time. Have you noticed changes in the wine style throughout that period?
Personally and frankly speaking, no.
Right.
Because when my father have a thought on the wines, he think the wine, he studied the wine, and then since I'm into this process as well, I can see how he thinks and how we are moving through thinking on even newer wines that came
Yes.
out 2 years ago. But once the wine is thought and found in a certain way, we are keeping it in that style. So we do not change the style of the wines while they are already being created.
Now, the greater majority of your plantings are Sangiovese Grosso, but you also have some international varieties, I believe, Cabernet and Merlot. How much of
Exactly.
your production is 100% Sangiovese, and how much of it is some assemblage with these international grapes?
Let's say 80 to 85%, it's all Sangiovese Grosso.
Right.
And there is 15% in terms of bottles, which is a blend or single French grape variety as the Cabernet Sauvignon.
And when were those vines introduced to your property?
Because since the study that the universities in Pisa and Firenze did over here, my father understood the potential to grow these grape varieties as well. And so he didn't want to miss the chance of improving his study. So still more than 85% of the vineyards here in Montepo are under Sangiovese Grosso,
Right.
but still he wanted to have a little space to discover more on international grape varieties.
What are your family's philosophies when it comes to the concept of aging in barrel in oak?
In oak. Here in Montepo, we are using both large and small oak. So we are speaking about barrels. Barrels are made in France from Taranso, and in Austria from Stockinger.
Ah, right.
And we are using mostly French barrique, so French wood. We are working really, really well with Taranso, to be honest. And one of their best barrique, the T5, it's phenomenal here, working really, really well on the wines. And we have done a quite long study on the oak with our wines, reaching which was the best, let me call a recipe to our wines with the wood. And Taranso and François Frère are two of the best producers of wood we could use with our wines. And of course, it depends from the wine, the time that it's going to spend in oak. Our main wine, which is the Sassoloro, this bottle over here. Our main wine is it's staying, for example, for 14 months in untoasted barrique from Tronçais. We usually say untoasted, excuse me, from France. We usually say untoasted because my father loves the oak until it's not, let me say, polluting the flavor of the wine. So he really wants to respect one main concept in the winemaking, which is the concept of terroir. This is why we are very, very focused on the agronomical part. We are very, very focused on the vineyards, on the microzonas, and we really want the wood to be a partner for aging our wines, but not for changing our wines in the wood.
Indeed, indeed.